So here's my topic, the use of scientific advisory bodies in the COVID pandemic. Here's my unnuanced preview. Governments do not follow the science. Science follows governments. Okay? Governments engineer scientific advice. Okay? So to ensure acceptance of this engineered scientific advice, governments have an incentive to suppress dissent. This is bad. We need urgently reform. We need to be conscious, however, also that reform is hard. Reform is difficult. I'll say now rather than at the end, reform is possible. We can see it. We have seen it. If you look over the millennia, the centuries, the decades, we have seen reform. So reform is possible. I'm not saying, give up or something like that. But we do have to recognize that reform is hard. Okay, so I'm drawing on the literature and political science and public administration on blame avoidance. Governments, we kind of think of governments as wanting to take credit for all the groovy things they do, and governments do want credit, but they are often more interested in avoiding blame, because if you do something, there's a risk that your policy will fail, or even if successful, will be unpopular. Okay? So it'd be great if you can kind of unload, blame for that on someone else. There are many, as we all learned as children, there are many strategies of blame avoidance. But a big one is delegating authority to experts, okay? which may be effective, but it has a problem. Because if I delegate the authority to an expert or a body of experts, I lose policy discretion. There is, however, in the right circumstances, a solution to this problem of losing policy discretion. Ad hoc, the word ad hoc we'll see in a moment is very important, ad hoc scientific advisory bodies. They can sort of take the blame, but leave you with that policy discretion that you want, and this is possible because they can be controlled. So let me say a few words on ad hoc versus permanent scientific advisory bodies. That's an important distinction. So ad hoc, like the word would suggest, ad hoc SABs, scientific advisory bodies, are created for the immediate crisis at hand. Examples include the famous SAGE group in the UK, and then when the administration changed, we went from one ad hoc scientific advisory body to another. Permanent scientific advisory bodies exist before, during, and after the crisis. A very salient example in the context of this morning's events would be Sweden's Public Health Agency. So what are the advantages of having a scientific advisory body that is ad hoc? Well, blame sticks to these things pretty good, okay? Because they're these salient official bodies. There's a news article in Nature in 2023 that I think illustrates that. They may be created or disbanded at will. The Polish scientific advisory body created for COVID-19 started to squawk when it felt that the Polish government was not taking vaccines seriously enough. So the government promptly disbanded them and replaced them with another body having different membership. Okay. So membership is easily controlled by this and other techniques. A SAGE membership over in the UK, they're, again, their principal scientific advisory, ad hoc scientific advisory body for COVID. Membership was chosen for that meeting by meeting. Okay? Now, SAGE experts are easily, scientific advisory body experts are easily represented as an external authority. What button do I push to get the video to go? Okay, so you heard Biden saying we follow the science, okay, and he said immediately after that short clip, he made reference to his scientific COVID-19 scientific advisory board that he created as soon as his administration went into office. So that illustrates how it is that you can kind of hide behind your scientific advisory body, right? Oh, you know, it's not us. They tell us we have to do this in order to be responsible. So it's an external authority. So ad hoc, so now very importantly, right, this is an important bullet point here. Ad hoc scientific advisory bodies can be controlled, in part for reasons, you know, given in those earlier bullet points, thus allowing government to retain policy discretion. Okay. This creates, however, an incentive to suppress dissent. I'm in part drawing on Christopher Hood's 2002 article. To get the advice that you want, your ad hoc scientific advisory board must be of uniform opinion. Dissenting outside experts may contest the insider's opinion, however, right? So that's like this danger, right? So if that danger comes to be realized, you may choose to suppress dissent, which you have this strong incentive to do. This is well illustrated by California Assembly Bill number 2098, which made it unprofessional conduct for physicians to give their patients misinformation and disinformation on COVID-19. It's a great example because it was signed into law by Governor Newsom here in California, and you know, it's written down. Those are the words. There's no ambiguity in interpretation what was going on here. Fortunately, somebody named Hogue and another person named Duracetti were the lead plaintiffs, among several others, in a lawsuit objecting to this on the grounds of First Amendment freedom of speech, and they prevailed. Okay? So though it was nominally in place for a while, it never really got off the ground, as I understand. But this illustrates how it is that we come upon what F.A. Hayek has called the end of truth. Hayek saying the interaction of individuals possessing different knowledge and different views is what constitutes the life of thought. So measures such as California's 2098 thwart the values of the Heterodox Academy: open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, constructive disagreement, without which truth dies. Okay? So the stakes here are very, very high. We absolutely, urgently need reform. Now, I have my own reform proposals, and I believe in them. I think these are very groovy. First of all, avoid ad hoc scientific advisory bodies. Right? You know, a piece of advice, number one. Also, to help ensure diversity of viewpoint, interests, and discipline, I interrupt myself to say, on this talk I'm not making a fuss about disciplinary diversity, but this is a big issue in this whole matter of scientific advisory boards and bodies, ad hoc scientific advisory bodies in general, and in COVID. I have criticized SAGE in the UK for having disciplinary narrowness. It's kind of a chronic problem. And you can kind of see why, because, you know, the narrower the discipline, the more control I have over the message. So anyway, to help ensure diversity of viewpoint, interest, and discipline, membership should be vetted by the appropriate legislature, so Parliament in the case of the UK's SAGE. This has been tried early on. We have a beautiful example of the Houston Crime Lab, which was tragically a kind of tragic joke in Texas, until they had reforms that included a governing body whose membership was vetted through the city council in Houston. It's now an absolutely exemplary crime lab, may perhaps be the most exemplary crime lab in the U.S. So applying this principle more broadly. Also, ad hoc and permanent scientific advisory bodies both should adopt formal procedures of internal procedures of contestation and challenge. So we should do what earlier sages in earlier years called for earlier crises.